What happened to Calvin?
Yeah, he quit.
He quit? Okay. Thought he got fired. I was like, no.
No. That was smell. That hates that alley. They have a dictionary for that.
You know what? Dictionary doesn't know.
Yes, that's what I want. Where do I put it?
Bruh. These are hard.
I got it.
How do you say this word?
Which one?
The 7.
Number 7 is reverberating.
And then, is successor, is that what's the office one? With a G?
Control.
Some are a little tricky. You need to work with the person next to you. Have something like that.
This is stupid. They don't say. I'm gonna punch this down. Like an old person. I
Ready? Go get them.
Yeah.
Walked off. He's messing with the door a little bit.
Which one is it?
Do we do the second part too?
Yeah, fill in the blank.
This is stupid. How are you? I can't find it. Can I read the dictionary site? Just don't and ever.
So what is your definition?
Yeah, that's not good.
Let's do that. Which one is it?
Okay, so number 1 is endeavor. It means to try hard to do something. So which one of those choices would mean something similar? Mark. Serious effort over time. So endeavor matches C. Everyone should have that. You have that, Alexis? Okay, you have it? Jack, you got it? Okay. And endeavor is C. Okay.
You.
Oh, that's why they're
So
like
hold it
that.
together, Alex, was endeavor goes to letter C. Number 1 goes to C.
The definition's all messed up because you're supposed to go with these ones down here. It says like John Adams was Washington's blank as president. Because it says office, and that was confusing.
John Adams was Washington's successor.
Yeah, but for the definition of successor, it was like.
Oh,
weird.
One who follows in office like the president.
Better. That's great.
Right.
You know,
You
look,
have to kind of use your good faith
yeah,
definition that
use your thing, open your skull, thinking out the brain about it. They're,
for you.
huh?
Your gossip.
Yeah. Yeah. How'd you find out?
And also, like,
What?
just say,
Was this the?
That's what you say.
No. Oh, this might be that. I ain't that.
All this,
Oh, oh, chill. Bro, looks like.
It's done.
Six foot. Right. Let's go right into it. I'll try to. Never Never.
guys were.
Very good.
All done?
That's all.
Something fun. These are the sentences. First, think about it. Just gather. And right here. Maybe like very
You might know.
Alright, so are we done? Cell phone should be away. You finished or no? Some of them are
I'm pretty close. I have like 2 left. Okay, I was able to get one word down.
time flies.
But he's about
This is stupid.
Yes. I mean,
Oh,
alright.
I can obviously.
Ready to remember in there?
Maybe. I can give
It'll
her
be 12.
I can give her a test run. Give her a
Alright, so let's go over some of the definitions, okay? So we did endeavor. What does that mean again? Come on, people. Somebody blurt it out. On your page, what did you pick for endeavor?
serious.
Serious effort over time. I gave you that answer.
Oh, I said
Alright, what about successor?
oh, that's one who follows another.
Yes, one who follows another in office. Grade.
Grade. Oh, that's born along the edge. Usually referred to after.
Perfect. This is your participation grade, so you better be shouting some answers out.
You
They're
got-
already
you-
done.
Yeah, maze. Yeah, you guys get the answer to the other.
Okay, so the next one is labyrinth.
Maze.
Jason said maze.
That's
Scavengers. Just shout it out, somebody.
People are serious. So
Yeah,
age.
that one, age.
Yes, perfect.
boy.
Then we have
Follow
plummeting.
straight down.
Let somebody else answer. If you already answered, you got your participation, and let somebody else. Plummeting, Mara. Falling straight down. Who wants to do reverberating? Alexis. Echoing. And then, next one, disreputable. Ethan, you had your hand raised before. Do you want to do it? Is it not respectable? Yeah. Okay, we still have a chance for participation because we have 8 sentences to fill in the blank.
Number
Hi there.
number 1 was grade.
Number 1 is grade. Number 2, and this time you guys are going to raise your hand because some of you already have your participation points and some of you don't.
Did I pass it already?
Yeah, you're good.
Can I go to the back?
When Jack gets back.
Can I go
Right,
after
let's
eight?
do it one at a time.
Because it
Can I go
COVID.
after eight?
Yes, go ahead. What?
Is it because it? Or is it?
Yeah, the COVID stuff.
It's just been on.
Okay, the next one, number 2, what do we got? Mara. Number 2, you have what? So you use the word labyrinth in there? Not quite. Not quite labyrinth, so here's the sentence. Afraid that I would come into contact with blank companions, my mother tried to send me to a school in another neighborhood.
I will rotting job. Someone if they try to send me. I'll kick them so hard in the face.
See, what do you got for number 2?
I just went.
I know, but scratch. See you a little bit later, okay? Okay. Number 2. If you don't want to go over the answers, that's fine. I'll just grade it as is.
I would go.
Okay, so somebody tell me what they have for number 2. Labyrinth? No. No, that was
What is? What would you get? You didn't even write anything down. You.
No, because I didn't. It's like too much to do with this. See, I did too much.
Okay, is it? Would it be a successor?
no.
Scavengers.
It's gonna be an adjective describing companions. What is it? Disreputable? Yes.
It was 2.
Alright, it was 8. Question 2 is 8. Alright, number 3. The book came blank to the ground after accidentally then would be pushed out the window.
But that's
Plummeting, yes.
oh boy.
Number 4, John Adams was Washington's blank as president. Oh, no.
2.
Successor, yes. Guys, you can just shout this out, okay? You don't have to be quiet about it. We have a bunch that are skating over and over again. Number 5, we needed a guy to lead us through the blank of caves. Mara. You had this before. What is it? 4. 4, yes. Labyrinth.
Oh. Alright, see.
Number 6, the deep blank tones of the organ bounced off the walls of the church, filling the building with its sound. Yes.
Yeah.
Reverberating. 7, to become
Boy.
an Olympic figure skater is a major blank that will take years of hard work.
Endeavor.
Yes.
Oh.
And then number 8, if I put the old furniture out at the curb, it won't be long before blank come to take it away. Scavengers.
Evidence.
Okay, so you should all have perfect score on the vocab.
What about the questions?
The questions you guys are going to work on either by yourself or
1 was 3.
Oh.
so.
2 was 8.
Okay, you're not working on the questions just yet until we're done reading chapters, and then you're going to work on it either.
I was hoping.
Yeah, that was for vocabulary.
I'm gonna go do some more history.
You're not doing history. Close your laptop.
Actually, she did security.
You know what? On my
So we're going to finish reading chapters 1 and 2.
On your head.
And then you guys will have time to work on your questions. Together, alone, whatever. Well, if we don't get through it today, then we'll start the question. Okay, so does anyone remember key points to what? Why did Josh been back so long?
What the heck?
I'm just not doing.
Does anyone know the key or remember the key points to what we read so far?
What if I go to the upstairs one? We're not in the same bathroom.
Tell me some things that you remember about what we read so far.
There he is.
Okay, this is part of your participation. What are some things that you remember what we read?
There's people
There was jobs.
in the city. Oh, they got assigned jobs. They pick stuff out of the hat or a bunch of deals.
It's true. I've been laughing about it. Yes, Mark. Yes, the kids only went to school until they were 12, and then they had to get a job. And who was the person that came to the school?
Mayor.
Mayor, yes. Okay, so we were on page 12. Someone just got a job that they didn't like. What's that?
Some
Oh, Lena, Pipeworks laborer. Do you remember what that is?
They clean pipes.
please touch it.
So they're underground, under the city a lot, right?
Under.
Is it a safe job or
Pretty damn.
dangerous? It's dangerous. And she wanted to be what? Do you remember? Messenger, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so Lena's, and we're on page 12 now. Lena stared down miserably at a letter B someone had scratched into her desktop long ago. Almost anything would have been better than Pipeworks laborer. Greenhouse helper had been her second choice. She imagined with longing the warm air and earthy smell of the greenhouse, where she could have worked with Clary, the greenhouse manager, someone she'd known all her life. She would have been content as a doctor's assistant, too, finding up cuts and bones, even street sweep or carpooler.
Gee, that was quick.
You don't have to take forever.
She's full.
Alright, I apologize for my choppy reading. Still happens.
Why? Deuces.
It's coming now. Alright, she would have been content as a doctor's assistant too, binding up cuts and bones. Even street sweeper or cart puller would have been better. At least then she could be above the ground, with space and people around her. She thought going down into the pipeworks must be like being buried alive. On page 12.
Okay.
One by one, the other students chose their jobs. None of them got such a wretched job as hers. Finally, the last person rose from his chair and walked forward. It was Dune. His dark eyebrows were drawn together in a frown of concentration. His hands, Lena saw, were clenched into fists at his sides. Dune reached into the bag and took out the last scrap of paper. He paused a minute, pressing it tightly in his hand. Go on, said the mayor. Read. Unfolding the paper, Dune read, Messenger. He scowled, crumpled the paper, and dashed it into the floor. Lena gasped. The whole class rustled in surprise. Why would anyone be angry to get the job of messenger? Bad behavior, cried the mayor. His eyes bulged and his face darkened. Go to your seat immediately. Dune kicked the crumpled paper into a corner. Then he stalked back to his desk and flung himself down. The mayor took a short breath and blinked furiously. Disgraceful, he said, glaring at Dune. A childish display of temper. Students should be glad to work for their city. Ember will prosper if all citizens do their best. He held up a stern finger as he said this and flipped his eyes slowly from one face to the next. Silence, cried the mayor. The blackouts, cried Dune. He jumped from his seat. The lights go out all the time. And the shortages, there's shortages of everything. If no one does anything about it, something terrible is going to happen. Nina listened with a pounding heart. What was wrong with Dune? Why was he so upset? He was taking things too seriously, as he always did. Miss Thorne strode to Dune and put a hand on his shoulder. Sit down now, she said quietly, but Dune remained standing. The mayor glared. For a few moments he said nothing. Then he smiled, showing a neat row of gray teeth. Miss Thorne, he said, who might this young man be? I am Dune Harrow, said Dune. I will remember you, said the mayor. He gave him a long look and turned to the class and smiled his smile again. Congratulations to all, he said. Welcome to Ember's workforce. Miss Thorne, class, thank you. The mayor shook hands with Miss Thorne and departed. The students gathered their coats and caps and filed out of the classroom. Lena walked down the wide hallway with Lizzie, said, "Who are you? I thought I picked a bad one. You got the worst. I feel lucky compared to you." Once they were out the door, Lizzie said goodbye and scurried away, as if Lena's bad luck were a disease she might catch. Mason, you're up.
Yeah, just got back.
I'm kidding.
Hey,
Try to
Holmes.
get used to pay
Hey,
attention.
kid.
Lena stood on the steps for a moment and gazed across Harding Square, where people walked bundled up cozily in their coats and scarves, or talked to one another in the pools of light beneath great street lamps. A boy in a red messenger's jacket ran toward the gathering hall. On Otterville Street, a man pulled a cart filled with sacks of potatoes, and in the buildings all around the square, rows of lighted windows shone bright yellow into gold. I don't know.
Put it back?
It's Crossway.
Well, that means I gotta be.
Yeah, I would just go to your escalator. Somebody's walking back.
Why did she? I thought she was.
It's not.
Why was she here?
She was in the beginning. Now she's not.
Then why did she?
For other
What?
Okay. That's all I can say. Nina sighed. This was where she wanted to be. Up here where everything happened, not down underground. Did I skip anything?
I don't know.
So,
Okay, then you can.
Someone tapped her on the shoulder. Startled, she turned and saw Dune behind her. His thin face looked pale. you trade with me? He asked. Trade? Trade jobs. I don't want to waste my time being a messenger. I want to help save the city, not run around carrying gossip. Ina gaped at him. You'd rather be in the pipeworks? Electrician's helper is what I wanted, Jude said, but Chet won't trade, of course. Pipeworks is second best. But why? Because the generator is in the pipeworks, said Jude. Ina knew about the generator, of course. In some mysterious way, it turned the running of the river into power for the city. You could feel its teeth rumble when you stood in Plummer Square. I need to see the generator, Jude said. I have ideas about it. He thrust his hands into his pockets. So, he said, will you trade? Yes, cried Lena. Messenger is the job I want most. And not a useless job at all, in her opinion. Who could it be expected to trudge halfway across the city every time they wanted to communicate with someone? Messengers connected everyone to everyone else. Anyway, whether it was important or not, the job of messenger just happened to be perfect for Lena. She loved to run. She could run forever. And she loved exploring every nook and cranny of the city, which was what a messenger got to do. All right then, said June, handed her his crumpled piece of paper, which he must have retrieved from the floor. Lena reached into her pocket, pulled out her piece of paper, and handed it to him. Thank you, he said. You're welcome, said Lena. Happiness sprang up into her, and happiness always made her want to run. She took steps 3 at a time and sped down Broad Street toward home. Orange chapter 2. Well, I started reading the other day.
Three hours.
Better.
Lena often took different routes between school and home. Sometimes, just for variety, she'd go all the way around Spark Swallow Square or way up by the shoe repair shops on Livery Street. But today she took the shortest route possible. She took the shortest route because she was eager to get home and tell her news. And if anyone was to jump in and read, it's feel great. She ran fast and easily through the streets of Denver. Every corner, every alley, every building was familiar to her. She always knew where she was, though most streets looked more or less the same. All of them were lined with old 2-story stone buildings. One of their window frames and doors long unpainted. On the street level were shops. Above the shops were the apartments where people lived. Every building at the place where the wall met the roof was equipped with a row of floodlights, big cone-shaped lamps that cast a strong yellow glare. What are you doing? Stone walls, lighted windows, lumpy, muffled shapes of people. Lena flew by them. Her slender legs felt immensely strong, like the wood of a bow that flexes and springs. She darted around obstacles, broken furniture left with the trash heaps, over scavengers, stoves, and refrigerators that were past repair, peddlers sitting on the pavement with their wares spread out around them. She leapt over cracks and potholes. When she came to Hactor Street, she slowed a little. This street was deep in shadow. 4 of its street lamps were out and had not been fixed. For a second, Lena thought the rumors she heard about light bulbs, that some kinds were completely gone. She was used to shortages of things. Everyone was, but not of light bulbs. If the bulbs for the street lamps ran out, the only lights would be inside the buildings. What would happen then? How could people find their way through the streets in the dark? Somewhere inside her, a black worm of dread stirred. She thought about June's outburst in class. Could things really be as bad as he said? She didn't want to believe it. She pushed the thought away. As she turned,
Westward?
you have your grab wrong page 8.
I thought you were going home.
I thought that
I thought you were going home.
was shelter.
They brought it down, but I'll have to ask them for it. Here you go.
Page
18. As she turned onto Budlow Street, she sped up again. purse carrying away a broken table. She passed a street sweeper shoving dust around with his broom. I am so lucky, she thought, to have the job I want. And because of June Harrow, of all people. She herself goes our way. When they were younger, Lena and June had been friends. Together they had explored back alleys, Together they had explored the back alleys and dimly lit edges of the city. But in their 4th year of school, they had begun to grow apart. It started one day during the hour of free time when children in their class were playing on the front steps of the school. I can go down 3 steps at a time. I can hop down on 1 foot, someone else would say. The others would chime in. I can do a handstand against the pillar. I can leapfrog over the trash can. As soon as one child did something, all the rest would do it too. They could. Nina could do it all, even when the dares got wilder. She yelled out the wildest one of all. I can climb the light pole. For a second, everyone just stared at her, but Lena dashed across the street, took off her shoes and socks, and wrapped herself around the cold metal of the pipe. Pushing with her bare feet, she inched upward. She didn't get very far before she lost her grip and fell back down. Children laughed, and so did she. I didn't say I'd climb to the top, she explained. I just said I'd climb it. The others swarmed forward to try. Lizzie wouldn't take off her socks. Her feet were too cold, Holt said. So she kept sliding back. Pretty Pen wasn't strong enough to get more than a foot off the ground. Next came June. He took his shoes and socks off and placed them neatly at the foot of the pole. Then he announced in his serious way, I'm going to the top. He clasped pole and started upward, pushing with his bare feet, his knees sticking out to the sides. He pulled himself upward, pushed again. He was higher now than Lena had been. But suddenly his hands slid and he came plummeting down. He landed on his bottom with his legs poking up in the air. Lena laughed. She shouldn't have. You might have been hurt, but he looked so funny that she couldn't help it. He wasn't hurt. He could have jumped up, grinned, and walked away, but June didn't take things lightly. When he heard Lena and the others laughing, his face darkened. His temper rose in him like hot water. Don't you dare laugh at me, he said to Lena. I did better than you did. That was a stupid idea anyway. A stupid idea to climb that pole. And as he was shouting, red in the face, their teacher, Mrs. Polster, came out onto the steps and saw him. She took him by the shirt collar to the school director's office, where he got a scolding served. After that day, Lena and June barely looked at each other when they passed in the hallway. At first, it was because they were fuming about what had happened. June didn't like being laughed at. Lena didn't like being shouted at. After a while, the memory of the light bulb incident faded. But by then, they had got out of the habit of friendship. By the time they were 12, they knew each other only as classmates. Nina was friends with Mindy Chance, Morgan Corbin, and most of all, red-haired Lizzie Briscoe, who could run almost as fast as Lena and could walk 3 times faster. Now, as Lena sped toward home, she felt immensely grateful to June and hoped he come to no harm in the pipeworks. Maybe they'd be friends again. She'd like to ask him about the pipeworks. She was curious about it. When she got to Greystone Street, she passed Clary Lane, who was probably on her way to the greenhouses. Clary winked to her and called out, "Good job!" And Lena called back, "Messenger," and ran off. Lena lived in Quilliam Square, over the yarn shop run by her grandmother. When she got to the shop, she burst in the door and cried, "Granny, I'm a messenger!" Granny's shop had once been a tidy place, where each ball of yarn and spool of thread had been spot in the cubby holes that lined the walls. All of the yarn and thread came from old clothes that had gotten too shabby to perform. Granny unraveled sweaters and picked apart dresses and jackets and pants. She wound the yarn into balls and thread into spools, and people bought them to use in making clothes. These days, the shop was a mess. Long loops and strands of yarn browns and grays and purples were mixed in with the ochres and say that ochres and olive greens and dark blues. Brady's customers often had to spend half an hour unsnarling the rust red yarn from the mud brown or trying to fish out the end of a thread tangled wad. Granny wasn't much help. Those days she just dozed behind the counter in a rocking chair. That's where she was when Lena burst in with her news. Lena saw that Granny had forgotten to knot up her hair that morning. It was standing out from her head in a wild white frizz. Granny stood up looking puzzled. You aren't a messenger, you're a schoolgirl, she said. But Granny, today was assignment day. I got my job and I'm a messenger. Granny's eyes lit up and she slapped her hand down on the counter. I remember, she cried. Messenger, that's a grand job. You'll be good at it. Nina's little sister toddled out from behind the counter on unsteady legs. She had a round face and round brown eyes. At the top of her head was a sprig of brown hair that tied. Oh, I thought you were laughing.
I did too.
Oh, that is. Okay. Now you're sharp. At the top of her head was a sprig of brown hair tied up with a scrap of red yarn. She grabbed onto Lena's knees. Why not, she said. Lena bent over and took the child's hands. Poppy, your big sister got a good job. Are you happy, Poppy? Are you proud of me? Poppy said something that sounded like, hoppy, hoppy, hoppy. Lena laughed, hoisted her up, and danced with her around the shop. Lena loved her little sister so much that it was like an ache under her ribs. The baby and Granny were all the family she had. 2 years ago, when the coughing sickness was raging through the city again, her father had died. Some months later, her mother gave birth to Poppy and died too. Lena missed her parents with an ache that was as strong as what she felt for Poppy, only it was a hollow feeling instead of a full one. Yes, Hunter. What about it?
You got it.
Oh, you found it?
Where was it at?
I knew it. Can you pass that?
I put it in there. So.
Can you pass that back to Fernando in the shop? Thank you for finding it. Oh, that's not necessarily the shelf, but
So is it your pickup ledger?
so again, we're not bringing the books home. We're just leaving them here, okay? Yeah, most students don't like to. Okay. I mean, it is what it is, right? If you guys are not going to read it home, you're going to want to take the book and then have to pay the library to replace it.
How much is it?
Probably like $12.
Okay. Back to the story. When do you start? Asked Granny. Tomorrow, said Lena. I report to the messenger station at 8 o'clock. You'll be a famous messenger, said Granny. Fast and famous. Taking Poppy with her, Lena went out of the shop and climbed the stairs to their apartment. It was a small apartment, only 4 rooms, but there was enough stuff in it to fill 20. There were things that had belonged to Lena's parents, her grandparents, and even their grandparents. Old, broken, cracked, threadbare things that had been patched and repaired dozens or hundreds of times. People in Ember rarely threw anything away. They made the best possible use of what they had. In Lena's apartment, layers of worn rugs and carpets covered the floor, making it soft but uneven underfoot. Against one wall squatted a saggy couch with round wooden balls for legs, and on one couch were blankets and pillows, so many that you had to toss some on the floor before you could sit down. Against the opposite wall stood 2 wobbly tables that held a clutter of plates and bottles, cups and bowls, unmatching forks and spoons, little piles of scrap paper, bits of string wound up in tidy wads, and a few stubby pencils. There were 4 lamps, 2 tall ones that stood on the floor and 2 short ones that stood on tables. And in uneven lines up near the ceiling were hooks that held coats and shawls and nightgowns and sweaters, shelves that held pots and pans, jars with unreadable labels, and boxes of buttons and pins and tacks. There were no shelves. Where there were no shelves, the walls had been decorated with things of beauty. A label from a can of peaches a few sun-dried yellow squash flowers, a strip of faded but still pretty purple cloth. There were drawings too. Nina had done the drawings out of her imagination. They showed a city that looked somewhat like Ember, except that its buildings were lighter and taller and had more windows. One of the drawings had fallen to the floor. Nina retrieved it and pinned it back up. She stood for a minute and looked at the pictures. Over and over she drew the same city. Sometimes she drew it as seen from afar. Sometimes she chose one of the buildings and drew it in detail. She put in stairways and street lamps and carts. Sometimes she tried to draw the people who lived in the city, though she wasn't good at drawing people. Their heads always came out too small and their hands looked like spiders. One picture showed a scene in which the people of the city greeted her when she arrived. The first person they had ever seen to come from elsewhere. They argued with each other about who should be the first to invite her home. Nina could see this city so clearly in her mind she almost believed it was real. She knew it couldn't be, though. The book of the City of Ember, which all children studied in school, taught otherwise. The City of Ember was made for us long ago by the builders, he said. It is the only light in the dark world. Beyond Ember, the darkness goes on forever in all directions. Nina had been to the outer border of Ember. She had stood at the edge of the trash heaps and gazed into the darkness beyond the city, the unknown regions. No one had ever gone far into the unknown regions, or at least no one had gone far and returned. And no one had ever arrived in Ember from the unknown regions either. As far as anyone knew, darkness did go on forever.
Oh, it's wrong. I'll take a break.
Like 10 pages up. Still, Nina wanted the other city to exist. In her imagination, it was so beautiful and it seemed so real. Sometimes she longed to go there and take everyone and Ember with her. But she wasn't thinking about the other city now. Today she was happy to be right where she was. She sat happy on the couch. Wait there, she said. She went into the kitchen where there was an electric stove and a refrigerator that no longer worked and was used to store glasses and dishes and coffee. Didn't get it then. Above the refrigerator were shelves holding more pots and jars, more spoons, and knives, a wind-up clock that Granny always forgot to wind, and a long row of cans. Nina tried to keep the cans in alphabetical order so she could find what she wanted. But Granny always messed them up. Now, she saw there were beans at the end of the row and tomatoes at the beginning. She picked out a can labeled baby drink and a jar of boiled carrots, opened them, poured the liquid,
Stop, baby carrots. Drink.
poured the liquid into a cup,
Gross.
and the carrots into a little dish, and took these back to the baby on the couch.
That's her little sister, a baby girl.
Just walking around.
Oh, there's a really cool.
So
You're the
that's
cat. We should be walking at each one.
It's not racist, it's separating one or the other.
What the?
Aren't you glad your desk back fit? That way you're not tempted to talk to each
I
other.
feel like losing an inch.
You don't have to sit there. Just slide your desk. Oh, you want to sit there?
Is that the whole?
Okay. Poppy dribbled baby drink down her chin.
Oh.
She ate some of her carrots and poked others between the couch cushions. For the moment, Lena felt almost perfectly happy. There was no need to think about the fate of the city right now. Tomorrow, she'd be a messenger. She wiped the orange goop off Poppy's chin. Don't worry, she said. Everything will be all right. Messenger's headquarters was on Clothing Street, not far from the back of the gathering hall. When Lena arrived the next morning, she was greeted by Messenger Captain Alice Fitzgerald, a bony woman with pale eyes and hair the color of dust. Our new girl, said Captain Fleury to the other messengers. Cluster of 9 people smiled and nodded at Lena. I have your jacket right here, said the captain. She handed Lena a red jacket like the one all messengers wore. It was only a little too large. From the clock tower of the gathering hall came a deep, reverberating gong. 8 o'clock, cried Captain Fleary. She waved a long arm. Take your stations. As the clock sounded 7 more times, the messengers scattered in all directions. Captain turned to Lena. Your station, she said, is Garn Square. Lena nodded and started off, but the captain caught her by the collar. I haven't told you the rules, she said. She held up a knobby finger. 1. When a customer gives you a message, repeat it back to make sure you have it right. 2. Always wear your red jacket so people can identify you. 3. Go as fast as possible. Your customers pay 20 cents for every message, no matter how far you have to take it. Lena nodded. I always go fast, she said. 4. The captain went on. Deliver a message only to the person it's meant for. No one else. Lena nodded again. She bounced a little on her toes, eager to get going. Captain Leary smiled. Go, she said, and Lena was off. She felt strong and speedy and sure-footed.
NASCAR.
She glanced at her reflection as she ran past the window of a furniture repair shop. She liked the look of her long, dark hair flying out behind her, her long legs in their black socks, and her flapping red jacket. Her face, which had never seemed especially remarkable, looked almost beautiful. She looked so happy. As soon as she came into Garn Square, a voice cried, Messenger! Her first customer. It was old Natty Prime, calling to her from the bench where he always sat. This goes to Ravenette Parsons, 18 Selverton Square, he said. Bend down. She bent down so that her ear was close to his whiskery mouth. The old man said in a slow, hoarse voice, The stove is broke. Don't come for dinner. Repeat. Lena repeated the message. Good, said Natty Prime. He gave Lena 20 cents and she ran across the city to Selverton Square. There she found Revenant Parsons, also sitting on a bench. She recited the message to him. Old turnip head, he growled. Lazy old flea face. He just doesn't feel like cooking. No reply. Lena ran back to Garden Square, passing a group of believers on the way. They were standing in a circle, holding hands, singing one of their cheerful songs. It seemed. Do you want to read?
Yeah.
No. He walks in. You're like.
How long do we read for?
We're just reading chapters 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah. You know how long that chapter 2 is, though?
Chapter 2 is almost over. I'm trying to speed through it.
I say we should just tap out now.
No, because your questions are about chapter 1 and 2.
Or she said something to read it for you. So you haven't heard?
I would.
Imagine, like,
No, I just
you got a whole class
here.
here. 8
That's why I'm reading it to you guys.
or most.
Okay. Her next customer turned out to be Mrs. Polster, the teacher of the 4th grade class. In Mrs. Polster's class, they memorized passages from the book of the city of Edler every week. Mrs. Polster had charts on the walls for everything with everyone's name listed. If you did something right, she made a green dot by your name. Something wrong, she made a red dot.
I always had.
What you need to learn, children, she always said with her resonant, precise voice, is the difference between right and wrong in every area of life. And once you learn the difference, here she would stop, point to the class, and the class would finish the sentence. You must always choose the right. In every situation, Mrs. Polster knew what the right choice was. Now here was Mrs. Polster again, moving over Lena and pronouncing her message to Anisette Lanfront, 39 Plum Street, as follows. She said, My confidence in you has been seriously diminished since I heard about the disreputable activities in which you engaged on Thursday last. Please repeat. It took Lena 3 tries to get this right. Uh-oh. A red dot for me, she said. Mrs. Polster did not find this amusing. Lena had 19 customers that first morning. Some of them had ordinary messages. I can't come on Tuesday. Buy a pound of potatoes on your way home. Please come and fix my front door. Others had messages that made no sense to her at all, like Mrs. Polster's. It didn't matter. The wonderful go into the houses of people she didn't know and hidden alleyways and little rooms in the backs of stores. In just a few hours, she discovered all kinds of strange and interesting things. For instance, Mrs. Sample, the mender, had to sleep on her couch.
Yeah, why don't instead of like being so that
That's a good
Where's that go? Audio
idea. Maybe they don't have a lot of paper and resources.
Write it on your arm, yeah.
Maybe they can't wash it.
jump in a lake, gee.
Maybe they don't have pen and paper or markers. I don't know.
Maybe they don't have a link screw.
What?
It's a very. We'll learn more about the city as we go on. They don't have a lot
Yeah,
of
what a bunch
resources.
of little questions.
But that was a good question. Thank you for asking.
Oh.
Okay, just a few hours, she discovered all kinds of strange and interesting things. For instance, Mrs. Sample, the mender, had to sleep on her couch because her entire bedroom, almost up to the ceiling, was crammed with clothes to be mended. Dr. Felinia Tower had the skeleton of a person hanging against her living room wall, its bones all held in place with black strings. I study it, she said when she saw Lena staring. I have to know how people are put together. At a house on Callow,
Who's listening to Jimmy Jam?
I'm not sleeping. I can see this.
I thought
Like, there's
somebody was on
listening to Jimmy Jam.
I was.
Good what? Let's talk Jimmy Jam.
At a house on Calvin Street, Nina delivered a message to a worried-looking man whose living room was completely dark. I'm saving on light bulbs, the man said, and when Nina took a message to the Can Cafe, she learned that on certain days the back room was used as a meeting place for people who liked to converse about great subjects. Do you think an invisible being is watching over us all the time? She heard someone ask.
Yep, it's Jeebus.
Perhaps, answered someone else. There was a long silence, and then again, perhaps not. All of it was interesting. She loved finding things out, and she loved running. And even by the end of the day, she wasn't tired. Running made her feel strong and big-hearted. It made her love the places she ran through and the people whose messages she delivered. She wished she could bring all of them the good news that they so desperately wanted to hear. Late in the afternoon, a young man came up to her, walking with a sort of sideways flourish. He was an odd-looking person. He had a very long neck and a bump in the middle, and teeth so big they looked as if they were trying to escape from his mouth.
Yeah, Billy.
His black, bushy hair struck. His black, bushy hair. His black, bushy hair stuck out from his head in untidy tufts. I have a message for the mayor at the gathering hall, he said. Paused to let the importance of this be understood. The mayor, he said. Do you get that? I got it, said Lena. All right, listen carefully. Tell him. Delivery at 8 from Looper. Give it back. Delivery at 8 from Looper. It was an easy message. All right. No answer required. He handed her 20 cents and she sprinted away. The gathering hall occupied one entire side of Market Square, which was the city's central plaza. The square was paved with stone and had a few benches bolted to the ground here and there, as well as a couple of kiosks for notices. Wide steps led up to the gathering hall, and fat columns framed its big door. The mayor's office was in the gathering hall. So were the offices of the clerks, who kept track of which buildings had which windows, what street lamps repair, and the number of people in the city. There was the office of the timekeeper, who was in charge of the town clock, and there were offices for the guards who enforced the laws of Ember. Now and then, pickpockets or people who got in fights imprisoned a small one-story structure with a sloping roof that jutted out from one side of the building. He ran up the steps and through the door into a broad hallway. On the left was a desk, and at the desk sat a guard, Barton Snowd, assistant guard, and a badge on his chest. It said a badge on it.
See, that's what we should just listen to.
He was a big man.
Audiobooks are the best.
The audiobooks?
Yeah, that's what I listen to.
I've been listening to an audiobook in Mrs. Free's room for weeks now, and it's driving me insane.
No, Audible has like their voices are very soothing.
Yeah, no, then you're gonna fall asleep.
Alright, let's get back to this so we can just finish reading it. Okay, so
Ooh.
stop. Put it down and listen. You're gonna have to get
Wiggle seat. Uh-oh, now we gotta get a wiggle seat. So,
Bouncy ball.
On the left side was a desk, and at the desk sat a guard, Barton Snow, assistant guard, said the badge on his chest. He was a big man with wide shoulders, brawny arms, and a thick neck. But his head looked as if it didn't belong to his body. It was small and round and topped with a fuzz of extremely short hair. His lower jaw jutted out and moved a little from side to side as if he were chewing on something. When he saw Lena, his jaw stopped for a moment and his lips curled upward in a very small smile. Good day, he said. What business brings you in today? I have a message for the mayor. Very good, Barton Snow heaved himself to his feet. Step this way. He led Lena down the corridor and opened a door marked reception. Wait here, please. The mayor is in his basement office on private business. Do you have a shortly? Lena went inside. I'll notify the mayor, said Barton Snow. Please have a seat. The mayor will be right with you. Pretty soon. He left, closing the door behind him. A second later, the door opened again, and the guard's small, fuzzy head reappeared. What is the message? He asked. I have to give it to the mayor in person, said Lena. Of course, said the guard. The door closed again. He doesn't seem very sure about things. Maybe he's new at his job. The reception room was shabby, but Lena could tell that it had once been impressive. The walls were dark red with brownish patches where the paint was peeling away. In the right-hand wall was a closed door. An ugly brown carpet lay on the floor, and on it stood a large armchair covered in itchy-looking red material and several smaller chairs. A small table held a teapot and some cups, and a larger table in the middle of the room displayed a copy of the Book of the City of Ember. Lying open as if someone were going to read. Portraits of all the mayors of the city in time hung on the walls, staring solemnly from behind pieces of old window glass. Lena sat in the big armchair and waited. No one came. She got up and wandered around the room. She bent over the Book of the City of Ember and read it for sentences.
Sure, why not?
The citizens of Ember may not have luxuries, but the foresight of the builders who built the storerooms at the beginning of time had ensured that they will always have enough, and enough is all that a person of wisdom needs. She flipped a few pages. The gathering hall clock, she read, measures the hours of night and day. It must never be allowed to run down. Without it, how would we know when to go to work and when to go to school? How would the light director know when to turn the lights on and when to turn them off again? It is the job of the timekeeper to wind the clock every week and to place the date sign in Hartman Square every day. The timekeeper must perform these duties faithfully. Lena knew that not all timekeepers were as faithful as they should be. She heard one of them some years ago who often forgot to change the date sign so that it might say Wednesday, week 38, year 227, for several days in a row. There had even been timekeepers who forgot to wind the clock, so it might stand at noon or at midnight for hours at a time, causing a very long day or a very long night. The result was that no one really knew anymore exactly what day of the week it was or exactly how many years it had been since the building of the city. They called this the year 241. But it might have been 245 or 239 or 250. As long as the clock's deep rang every hour and the lights went on and off more or less regularly, it didn't seem to matter. Lena left the book and examined the pictures of the mayors. The seventh mayor, Pod Warthworth was her great-great. She didn't know how many greats, grandfather. He looked quite dreary, Lena thought. His cheeks were long and hollow, his mouth turned down at the corners, and there was a lost look in his eyes. The picture she liked best was of the fourth mayor, Jane Larkin, who had a serene smile and fuzzy black hair. Still no one came. She heard no sounds from the hallway. Maybe they'd forgotten her. Nina went over to the closed door in the right-hand wall. She pulled it open and saw stairs going up. Maybe while she waited, she'd just have to see where they went. She started upward. At the top of the first flight was a closed door. Carefully, she opened it. She saw another hallway and more closed doors. She shut the door and kept going. Her footsteps sounded loud on the wood floor, and she was afraid someone would hear her and come and scold her. No doubt she was not supposed to be here. But no one came, and she climbed on, passing another closed door. The gathering hall was the only building in Denver with 2 stories. She had always wanted to stand on its roof and look out at the city. Maybe from there it would be possible to see beyond the city into the unknown regions. If the bright city of Rawlins really did exist, it would be out there somewhere. At the top of the stairs, she came to a door marked, and she pushed it open. Chilly air brushed against her skin. She was outside. Ahead of her was a flat gravel surface, and about 10 paces away she could see the high wall of the clock tower. She went to the edge of the roof. From there she could see the whole of Ember. Directly below was Harkin Square, moving this way and that, all of them appearing from this top-down view, more round and tall. Beyond Harkin Square, the lighted windows of the buildings made checkered lines, yellow and black, row after row, in all directions. She tried to see farther across the unknown regions, but she couldn't. At the edges of the city, the lights were so far away that they made a kind of haze. She could see nothing beyond them but blackness. All right?
Oh.
Right? Almost done. She heard a shout from the square below. Look! Came a small but fierce voice. Someone on the roof. She saw a few people stop and look up. Who is that? What's she doing up there? Someone cried. More people gathered around until a crowd was standing on the steps of the gathering hall. They see me, Lena thought, and it made her laugh. She waved at the crowd and did a few steps from the Bigfoot's security dance, which she learned on Clothing Square Dance Day. And they laughed and shouted some more. Then the door behind her burst open, and a huge guard with a bushy black beard was suddenly running toward her. Halt! He shouted. Though she wasn't going anywhere, he grabbed her by the arm. What are you doing here? I was just curious, said Lena in her most innocent voice. I wanted to see the city from the roof. She read the guard's name badge. It said Reg Stagmark, Chief Guard. Curiosity leads to trouble, said Reg Stagmark. He peered down at the crowd. He had caused a commotion. He pulled her toward the door and hustled her down all 3 flights of stairs. When they came out into the waiting room, Barton Snow was standing there with flustered, his jaw twitching side to side. Next to him was the mayor. A child causing trouble, Mayor Bull? Said the chief guard. Mayor glared at me. I recall your face. From assignment day. Shame. Disgracing yourself and your new job. I didn't mean to cause trouble, said Lena. I was looking for you so I could deliver a message. Shall we put her in the prison room for a day or 2? Asked the chief guard. The mayor frowned. He pondered a moment. What is the message? He said. Bent down so that Lena could speak into his ear. She noticed that he smelled a little like overcooked turnips. Delivery at 8, Lena whispered, from Looper. The mayor smiled a tight little smile. He turned to the guard. Just a child's antics, he said. We will let it go this time. Now on, he said to Lena, behave yourself. Yes, Mr. Mayor, said Lena. And you, said the mayor, turning to the assistant guard and shaking a thick finger at him. Watch visitors much more carefully. Barton Snow blinked and nodded. Lena ran for the door. Outside, the small crowd was still standing by the steps. A few of them cheered as Lena came out. Others frowned at her and muttered words like mischief and silliness and show off. Lena felt embarrassed suddenly. She hadn't meant to show off. She hurried past, out into Otterville Street, and started to run. She didn't see June, who was among those watching her. He had been on his way home from his day in the pipe works when he'd come across a cluster of people pacing up of the gathering hall and laughing. He was tired and chilly. Bottoms of his pant legs were wet, and mud clung to his shoes and smeared his hands. When he raised his eyes and saw the small figure next to the clock tower, he realized right away that it was Lena. He saw her raise her arm and wave and hop about, and for a second he wondered what it would be like to be up there, looking out over the whole city, laughing and waving. When Lena came down, he wanted to speak to her, but he knew he would still be looking, and that she would ask him questions he didn't want to answer. So he turned away, walking fast. He headed for home. Okay, so your job.
We didn't even get to chapter 3, did we?
No, we were only in chapters 1 and 2.
Yes, stupid.
Your job now, you can either work by yourself. So you're either doing this by yourself or with a partner. You're going to start answering the questions on pages 7, 8, and 9. Obviously, you're not going to do all of them today.
Can I just talk about it?
Almost there is no chapter 2. Unless chapter 2 is ripped out of the book.
Are you not following along the entire time? Or
Chapter 2.
I've passed the rule like 5 times.
It's okay, I found it.
Okay, again, you know what you're supposed to be working on.
Yeah, the whole day.
So that's what you're doing for the next 20 minutes.
That's like 7 times.
Well, that's wonderful.
When I said math,
No, you said you don't care if you have the wrong answer. I said that's wonderful.
You're raising your mask.
I missed those. She math one, missed it.
Okay, take your mask off. Take your mask
What?
off.
We're far away from my look.
Ready up before your mask off.
We're far away. 6
You never said how far.
That's true.
Ethan, you get to work.
Pigeon. Genius. What? Genius pigeon. Alright. Huh? I thought you called me a pigeon. Hey, stupid.
I don't even know how to answer that question. You put it in a box. Okay. In box.
Hey, your mask must be on. Hunter, do you have a mask? Hunter.
Poking.
Gunther.
Then the poking.
Gunther. Bumper.
Answering questions?
Hunter, Hunter. Hunter, she was talking to you.
Why didn't you hear you? Come on.
Oh, I thought you were ignoring me on purpose.
What?
You're nuts.
All that up.
I almost wrote you up for that.
What?
I've been trying to get into this mask on for like 5 minutes, and every time I
Nice
say
talk.
something, they ignored me, but I didn't realize you had your phone, so I apologize.
Alright. So,
Okay, so what's the next?
Mason did number.
What is building?
I did a number two.
Sure, instructions were not
Well,
received.
Mason, you're writing answers down.
Yeah, I did. They're written down. I can. Wait, they put a little like restroom other thing down back there. Like on your own.
So go back to still
Yeah, they
the
put a little
instructions.
rest right there. I'm gonna use it.
They'll tell you that.
Just stab me in my phone.
What's
It's
the
really
plan?
cool.
Only what?
Maybe try it. I'd be like, okay, here you
Instructions.
I think so.
So-
So, how did they make sure those
That sounds like this one is good.
files?
Yeah. But it was good.
Are you guys doing it?
Yeah.
So just put it.
What went wrong?
Wait, there's more questions?
No.
On the back. Holmes, that's stupid. No. Yeah.
So there's two.
Yeah. I can't write so.
I'm gonna fit with this. What? Bring it right.
There's only one instruction. Just before chapter one. Are you ready?
What went wrong with the bill?
Jack, what are you doing?
Oh.
You didn't go right.
Oh, I'm like, I haven't eaten since lunch yesterday. I'm like dying right now.
Why haven't you eaten? You not have dinner at home?
No, I was at work and I didn't get food. But I just didn't eat.
That's not good.
I can do it now. It's over. No laughing. It's not allowed.
You guys should be working on your stuff.
It's too
I
hard.
am.
That's not.
Yeah, we're kind of stuffy.
Mister. Coming from the one that just has to talk to me. Stupid.
So what was the answer to the first question? Was it?
When he tells you that, that handwriting right there. So sexy. That's pretty good. But that's fine.
If you guys are having trouble with any answers, you're both have it right there. So,
Like, so, that's my life. Good. Wait, so that's right.
Isn't
It's faster for right.
it's
Faster right with my left.
It
Yeah,
says
but that's not.
instruction chapter 2. Right. Really? Really? I do not.
Yeah, disgusting.
Really?
You. Oh, what's the answer for number 3?
I am.
You didn't answer. I didn't answer first. Oh, I answered your second. Not even. I did your answer Yeah, because I answered it. You told me. I wrote it down. Therefore, it's answered. I'm supposed to say no word.
Alright, so then we get past this.
Well, no.
Okay, how do we go with the picture that's not be seen to 120 years? Where do they put instructions?
Okay, alright. Thought we were reading. Oh, man. Oh, I didn't get that other. I was in.
Oh, that's awesome, yeah.
Ooh.
and if you don't finish it,
Right. So the first one.
I give up. I give up 3. You give up on number 5. Yeah. So like your brother. Don't. Okay, I said that so you weren't even go out and laugh.
What?
Does it say like you devil?
Yes, because it was handed down to one
Devil.
okay? But then something happened, so the heck.
Good. Yes. Oh God. I just looked up at your brother. It was so funny. I was like, what? It was brothers.
These are probably they came where these are probably just shorts. They hang that low. You slip me on that to it.
No, I swear.
Alright, you should be in your own seat. Are you done, Jack? Still 6 minutes.
Fun.
No, 6 minutes.
That's fun.
Read all 3 pages?
Yeah.
Did you put your book back?
Yeah.
If I get certification points,